In my opinion, Dead Ringer is one of the coolest abilities available in Borderlands 4. It also pairs very well with status effect damage, and there's one particular sniper rifle that makes it even more fun. So if you're sick of using the bleed build that's been going around, that I'm also guilty of sharing, you might want to try this one instead. Goes without saying, but background footage will include some of the bosses from later in the game. So let's start by explaining the build. As already mentioned, you're going to want to use the Dead Ringer action skill. This is the one that spawns clones of yourself. We're going to take some abilities later on that buffs up our clones a bunch, and it will even copy our main weapon. Yeah, it's really fun. First off, 5 points into cold iron, more gun damage, as well as minion damage. Next up, Portents of Suffering. This is where we start to stack some of the status effect damage. Straight up just plus 35%. 1 point into Blood Sacrifice, which will activate our kill skills whenever one of our minions die. Because we can spawn 3 of these at a time, it's going to naturally find itself proccing against stuff like bosses. And speaking of kill skills, we put our other 4 points into Grave Fiends, which gives us and our minions increased damage with each stack. Then we can take our first augment. Now whenever an enemy spawns, we're going to cast Wither on them. This will deal status effect damage over time, and it increases the damage the enemy takes for a duration. You can stack once per elemental type. We will be dealing multiple elements, we'll get onto that very shortly. And if you're swapping guns and spawning your minions with different types, you're going to benefit from that as well. Again, very effective for bosses. You can get up to 120% bonus damage on them just from this skill. Next, Prismatic Ichor. This one's really fun. Basically, whenever we or our minion apply a status effect, another random element is also applied to the enemy. And with 5 points, that status will do 150% of the initial damage. So let's say we hit an enemy with a fire weapon, now all of a sudden they're also being corroded. Or we hit an enemy with a shock weapon, and now they're also being radiated. A bunch of damage, and with status damage being buffed in this build, it takes it even further. Next, 5 points into Keen Suffering. Our status effect damage now has a chance to critically hit, which is 20%. We can guarantee this to crit every single time by using the Jacob throwing knife. If you're unsure what I'm referring to, check out yesterday's build video. I'll also run you through it shortly later on. And then for our capstone, we are going to use Heirloom. Now this means whenever we spawn our Spectre, which is the gun variant of our minion, it will have the same gun that we have equipped. So if you're wielding a legendary weapon with a very specific unique effect, your minion will also have that. You'll be noticing this in the background footage, but I'll also run you through what that specific gun is. Only one of your clones can have it at a time, but trust me, that's more than enough. Next up, we're going to go into the red tree. So first off, 5 points into Blood is Magic. We're going to deal extra action skill damage, which means our minions do more damage while we're at full health. Everything else from this second tree doesn't really benefit our build, so we're going to want to take 5 points of Grave Sustenance instead. This is going to cause our action skill to come off cooldown more often. Because a lot of our damage does come from the minions, we want as much uptime as possible. Then we go over here to Vorpal Fiends, plus 25% crit damage when we max that out. So I actually realised I put points into the wrong skill. You do not want to put 5 points into Elemental Essence, you want to put the points into Keen Fiends. I made a mistake. The reason why, this looks very good on the surface level, with gaining increased elemental damage which doubles while you have your action skill active, effectively 40% bonus elemental damage when you have a clone spawn. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but the reason we don't want this is because we're buffing elemental damage and not status damage. If you're confused at what that means, elemental damage is the raw power of the element that comes on your gun, whereas status effect, the thing we're buffing, is the damage over time effect that we apply. So while this looks good on the surface, it doesn't do too much, whereas the plus 20% crit chance we're going to get here directly benefits the next skill. And I'll caveat by saying it doesn't particularly matter if you're going to be using the Jacob throwing knife, which guarantees crit hits, so bear that in mind too. But yeah, our final skill is Reawakening. Whenever we or our minion critically hit, there's a chance we restore action skill cooldown. This is going to give us that almost permanent uptime on our clones. So if you're not trying to cheese with the Jacob knife, you definitely want this 20% crit to ensure we constantly have a clone active for that bonus damage we got from previous skills. And then this is what my specializations look like. They're not too important, but Killer is very good because as you can see, you get crit damage and you get status effect damage, which is what we're going with for this build. This augment here also makes enemies take increased damage for each status effect we have applied to them. Minimum, because of our skills we had earlier, you'll always have 2 applied. In most cases, more than that. Naturally, you're going to want to be using weapons that have high status chance as well as high status damage. My personal favourite is using the complex root sniper. This is what you're seeing in the background footage for the most part, with the spiral element that goes around the shot. You can farm this from the boss that spawns in the tipping point or the bunker, run to the end, kill that final boss, eventually it will drop. There's multiple element variants and I recommend getting as many of them as you can. In this video I'm only using the fire variant, however 100% you're going to want to try and find a shock version if you can. Another great alternative is the Katagawa's Revenge. You can find this over here at Driller's Hole. Again, kill that final boss and that's where it drops. Now in practice any elemental weapon will do the trick, but if you want to maximize damage, from what I found in my playing and testing, this sniper is the best, or one off. Now I'll be honest, everything else down here doesn't matter as much. I explained, but rep kits don't really put much time into thinking about it. Your class mod, you're going to want to find something that buffs the skills you're using, and also that comes with status damage as one of the passives. You might be thinking, why aren't you doing it? I sold mine like an idiot. But again, you don't have to be picky with these, you don't need a legendary, just find something that buffs the skills you're using. Now with this build you are going to be a little bit flimsy, and so your shield you're going to want a more tanky variant. This is currently what I'm using, which gives me some damage reduction stacks. You don't need to use this specific one, find whatever you have best at the time. And same with your enhancement, find something that buffs status effect damage, and if you're using a sniper, go for something that buffs that as well. And of course, I explained earlier, this is currently the knife that's breaking the game. It guarantees critical hits, and because we took this skill, that means our status effects can critically hit. This goes hand in hand with that. So if you want that bonus damage, if you're struggling with bosses, take this, throw it at the boss, and then shoot it. You'll see so much damage increase. But other than that, the build's pretty straightforward. It's very flexible in that whenever you find a legendary weapon that has good status, feel free to just swap it in and try it out. Now, the shortcoming with the build does of course come from the fact that your elemental type advantage is pretty important, at least when it comes to bosses. With general mobs it doesn't matter so much, but you might find yourself struggling against the bigger guys, like the Vault Guardians for example. When you get the right gear, you still will destroy them, don't get me wrong. But yeah, it requires a bit of swapping in and out of different weapons, as well as trying to spawn your clones to match that as well. I mean, in general, this build does require a bit more forward thinking from the player and more actual input. Your clones can be very susceptible to damage and will die quickly if you spawn it right next to the boss. So be picky with where you spawn them, try and get them in multiple areas, hard to reach areas if you can, like on high ledges. So long as they survive, they're going to do a bunch of damage. But again, with the skills we take, our cooldowns are also going to be very low, so it's not the end of the world if they do die. Let me know in the comment section down below if there is anything you would do to improve this build. Any suggestions I will add to a pinned comment down below. If you enjoyed this build, make sure you check out my other build video on Vex with the strongest build in the game. Thanks for watching.